Hello and welcome to today's live stream. Today I am going to be riding Cinnamon in a Western saddle. As you can see, I have Cinnamon, Petra, and Nakona all in here. And if you wonder what they're doing, they're all standing there hobbled. Now, if you're not familiar with hobble training, I'll talk about that in a little bit, but I'm going to go set down my super heavy saddle. Okay, I'm all worn out because I've been hustling around in the snow and lugging stuff around and bringing horses back and forth. But I want to let you know now, I hobble train all of my horses, but these guys haven't had hobbles on since probably, I don't know, October, maybe September. So it's been a while since any of these guys have had hobbles on. And sometimes things can get a little bit Western, so to speak. So basically, hobbling is nothing more than simply tying a horse, but they're not connected by the head. Instead, their feet are hobbled together. And as you can see, they don't really look very concerned. So hobbling is an excellent thing to do. And I've found a lot of value in it for a lot of reasons. I'll give you one example. I had a client message me, I don't know, maybe a year or so ago, and I started her horse several years ago. And it's pretty much standard for me to hobble train all the horses that I work with. And her horse got really tangled up in a fence at home. And when she found him, then, that day, he was all tangled up in the fence, but he was just standing there, just not moving. And she took a picture and sent it to me, and she said, I thought that you'd really like this picture. And she says, I'm sure it has something to do with the fact that he's been hobbled. Now, this was a pretty good-natured horse too. But honestly, there's so many things that a horse can benefit from being hobbled that I prefer to do it with all of my horses. I look at it as as insurance. If I'm riding my horse and they get tangled up in something while I'm riding and they're not hobble trained, there's a good chance that they're going to freak out. Or if they've just not had any rope work done on their feet at all, there's a good chance that they're really going to have a hard time with it. And for me, I like to make sure that they know to give to the pressure of their feet. I want my horse to give to the pressure when I lead them. I want them to give to the pressure on their feet. I want them to give to pressure on their tail, for crying out loud. Anything that I can teach my horse to give to pressure is insurance, okay? It's one less chance of them getting hurt somehow. I just look at it as being prevention. So it's something that I firmly believe in, and I've been doing it for 20 years. So I really like hobble training. So now there's a piece of equipment though that I am missing. And that is I have a third hobble that goes on a hind foot, and then you connect that to the front. And what that does is it prevents horses from hopping around. They learn to move around. So Nakona did move a little bit. She started out where Petra was and ended up over there. So when I came back with Petra and Cinnamon, Nakona had moved a little bit. So what I want is when I hobble my horses, I want them to know that, okay, I am tied, period. I'm not going anywhere, I'm just tied. And so I do need to start incorporating that extra piece of equipment to make sure that, okay, you guys just know that you're not supposed to go anywhere. Hobbles means stay put, okay? So that's the basics of it. So like I said, none of these guys have been hobbled in quite a while, and I don't think Cinnamon really has been hobbled very often. I know we've done some work with, rope work with her feet and stuff. When I say rope work, I mean taking a lariat, teaching the horse to give to the feel of the rope, and you can actually lead them around by a foot rope. So that gets to be pretty cool. All right, I'm gonna brush these guys real quick. You guys can just think of any questions that you might have. I hope everybody can hear me okay. This is, I don't know what day this is of the Corona Chronicles. But if you're new here, I'm doing these Monday through Friday, and then on the weekends I will be posting videos that I edited too. So see how Cinnamon can just kind of move around there? So it's nice because they, you know, they find comfort in being able to move around. Now she might panic a little bit, pop up in the air, whatever. So, but just know that this is all part of the process. Now there is a lot that goes into teaching a horse to hobble train. It's not just a matter of, oh, let's just tie their legs together and call it good. You have to go through the process, and that's a whole nother video, a whole nother day. So, but a lot of people just don't understand the purpose of it. This is what I do. So I'm gonna go ahead and brush them. I'm gonna ride Cinnamon. I'll probably ride Nakona later, but I don't have a lot of time today, so we'll see. Now Cinnamon gets pretty grouchy with being groomed. She's just not a big fan. She's not a big fan of grooming. I'm gonna just kind of move this a little bit so maybe you guys can see a little better. Maybe not. Maybe. Okay, I guess that's as good as it's gonna get. You hear her squeal. She just is not a fan of being groomed. She's also in heat really bad right now, so it is what it is. This is very normal when she's in heat. It's what she does. Okay, so is everybody having a hard time hearing or seeing anything here, or is it working out okay? We got a lot of wind today. So I'll just wait until I can maybe hear from a couple of you guys. It's working fine. Okay, thank you for letting me know that. I know some people have problems, some people don't. So I'm going to talk about Cinnamon a little bit. She's in heat. So you see that? How she's got her tail lifted up. She's in heat. And she's really not one to love being, but when she's in heat, she definitely will squeal while you're brushing her. So it is what it is. And when she's not in heat, she's usually okay with it, but she's just kind of always been not a big fan. She can be kind of cinchy too, depending on, she's a lesson horse. So depending on who's working with her, this is a habit that came with her that I believe was taught. But so anyway, with cinching her up, she gets pretty grouchy as well. So I'll be working on that over the next however long that nobody else is riding her, and I think that'll be really good. So, and the couple gals that do ride her on a regular basis, that sort of lease her, do a really nice job making sure that, you know, she's tacked up well. So that's good. But anyway, so I'm gonna go back, but did you see how, I don't know, the back door blew or something and they all got scared and took off? She does get the mare ease. Yes, somebody just asked me that. Yes, she does get the mare ease, and it definitely does help her. Sometimes she won't eat it though, so that does become an issue, but she is probably in her worst heat cycle of the year. So, all right, I will just start tacking her up and doing my thing. Notice how I keep my hand out when I reach underneath her? She's one that will want to reach back and nibble on you too, so I'm cautious. snarled up and kind of yucky looking. I'm not going to fuss around with that right now. And I'm not going to worry about the other two. They're just going to stand there while I'm riding. So I'm going to leave them be. Hopefully they don't come over and bother the camera at all. But I'm going to take the hobbles off, and then I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of groundwork with her. Does anybody have any questions before I get started with the groundwork? Anybody? Somebody said you can't see how hobbles. I did not see that question. Here, let me see if I can go back to it. You can't see where hobbles enforce positiveness. It's just another form of tying. It's no different than, and actually Cinnamon would prefer to be hobbled than to be tied because she doesn't like her face being at the wall. She would rather be able to see everything. So when they're hobbled, it's no different than tying. The purpose of hobbling 3 of them at once is I have a lot of horses and I have a lot of them to work. So usually when I bring horses into work, I typically will bring several in and I'll tie them. So today, instead of them all being tied, where they can sit and eat and it's the same thing every day, they're going to be out here with me hobbled. Sometimes I'll have 5, 6 horses out here hobbled with me. Sometimes they'll all be loose and I'll send them around with a flag. It really all depends. So, but this is a good way for me to work on these 2 horses, just patiently standing and waiting. And I'll probably move their feet around after a little bit, but for now, they're just going to hang out there. All right. So, I'm going to go ahead and Cinnamon is, I think she's 11. I'm pretty sure she's 11. She is a registered paint. Her, I don't know what her bloodlines are off the top of my head. I don't remember them. But, so yeah, have I ever ridden a horse in no tack? Absolutely, I do it all. I have a video of Nakona from this winter riding her without no halter, no bridle, no saddle, no pad, no nothing. And that's under, that you can find that video in Nakona's playlist. All of my horses have their own playlist, so you can go and find information about those horses in their playlist. Some of them, I'm pretty sure Cinnamon has one. Like Lucky doesn't have one yet, but I will have a playlist for him pretty soon too. So, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and turn this a little bit, and that way you guys can hopefully get a good school, I'm doing this video just for you, just so you know, because I know you've been asking for me to ride Cinnamon. So, all right. Now, she has not been ridden since, March 19th, I think was the last day that Cinnamon was ridden. So she's not been worked with in quite some time. So it's this is the first time, guys, this is the first time in my career that my horses have ever gone this long without being worked. This is so out of the ordinary. Typically my horses are ridden 3 to 5 days a week at least. And sometimes, sometimes they're ridden a couple times a day. So it's just, this is very, very strange. So all my horses are really fresh. They haven't been groomed as much as they typically would. There's a lot more work for me, and it is what it is. And I got horses that are now out of shape. So it's gonna take me a while to get them back into condition. So when it comes time for me to start working again, I'm gonna have to really double down and ride a lot of horses to get them ready for their jobs so they can handle it. But first thing I'm gonna do actually is I gotta pick up the hair that's around her because I wanna make sure that I don't drive that into the footing. I try to keep my arena footing as clean as I possibly can, so. You two girls need to just chill out in the cave. when I go to walk them off after they've been hobbled, they'll take really big, funny steps, kind of like when they wear split boots. Now, as far as hobble training goes, let me tell you guys a little story that happened to me when I was, I don't know, probably in my mid to late teens. I was on my horse Poco. Hello, Cinnamon. Excuse me. She says, I want to get up close and personal. I was on my horse Poco on a trail ride, and he, now this mare, you're going to see me have to firm up with her a lot more than you see me firm up with Nakona and Blossom especially, because she's real pushy about stuff. So she thinks it's okay just to push right into my space and kind of knock me out of the way. It's all being part of, you know, for one, she's a lesson horse. I don't spend hardly any time with her at all. I don't ride her very often. When I first got her a couple of years ago, I spent quite a bit of time on her, just getting her to where she could be a lesson horse. But then now I don't really do a whole lot with her. But so you'll see me have to be firmer with this horse. But I always start out light. Always start out light and use the cue that I want it to be. But I will firm up if I need to. But so my horse Poco, I was on a trail ride and he got the fork of a tree branch caught on his hind leg. And he totally flipped out. It was a very scary situation, and I'm very lucky because the tree branch came off, but he panicked. And where we were, it was kind of like on the trail, it was like all woods over here and then just straight drop down over here in this ravine. So I really didn't have anywhere to go. But when you're on a horse and it is completely upset because it thinks that something is attacking it, you know, he had this thing wrapped around his leg and he didn't know why, you start thinking about, where am I going to dive off? Okay, so it's super important to me to prepare your horse for as many things as possible. So if that horse had rope work done with its legs and been hobble trained and all that, there's a good chance he would have been like, oh, I'm stuck. You know, and the same horse, we had a major wreck with him with a sleigh. That's a different story, a different day. But there's just so many things that I didn't know then because I was a kid. You know, so here I am knowing all these things throughout my life that I've learned from experience, and I'm trying to take all this stuff and turn around and teach it to all the kids that come through my program, and adults too. But, you know, I just look at the things that I didn't know when I was a kid, and I want all these kids to know as much as possible. So for the person who said they can't see the positives in doing this, it's just one more thing that you can put in your toolbox that you can be like, oh, my horse is going to be okay. If that happens, my horse gets tangled up in this or tangled up in that, or if we get into a situation when I'm riding him, we're not all going to die because my horse flipped out because he's not been exposed to that kind of stuff. So that's kind of where I'm going with it. So if you think about it, like hobble training, if you've got, a lot of people ask about ground tying your horse, okay? So ground tying is only so effective. I don't care who you are. These horses just got scared of the wind blowing the door or the cat jumping up the wall, whatever it was that spooked them. And even with hobbles on, they were still able to boogie across my arena. Now imagine you are a cowboy out tending fence or doing whatever job that you need to do on horseback because it's the only option, okay? It's the only option is to be on horseback to do this particular job, and you need to get off of your horse and use both hands to do something. Are you gonna rely on ground tying 100% and you're miles from anything? Think about that. most cowboys, cowgirls that are out ranching and doing stuff, they've got a set of hobbles hanging off of their saddle. And there's a reason for that. Because when they get out there and they are in a predicament and they need to be able to make sure that their horse will stand there, and oh, by the way, there's no trees to tie them to or anything else, what are they going to do? And that's why so many ranch horses are just straight up some of the best horses you'll ever find, because those horses have actually worked for a living. They've gone out, they've done a job, they've been used, okay? So it's, and not in a bad way by any means. Horses like to have jobs. They like to have stuff to do. But so there's a lot of that that's been lost over the years. And I love using all of this stuff. There's a lot of times where I'll take my horses and I'll hobble them and I'll leave them out in the yard. And they think it's the best thing ever because they get to just sit and mow grass. And they don't care if they can go anywhere or not because they can munch on all the grass that's right there. So, and again, as you saw, they can move around to an extent. So it's not, but if I were out fixing fence or doing a job with horses and I was by myself, miles away from anything, I'm probably not gonna just rely on ground tying. I'm probably gonna pull the hobbles off my saddle and hobble my horse just to make sure that I've got somewhat of a chance of keeping my horse. But see how as soon as I move back and give her a little bit of an opening, she takes it. I want her just to stand here. So I have to work on that with her. And I'm gonna let her go every time and give her the opportunity to stand here. But, and see, now she's like, well, if I can't leave, I'll put my head down on the ground and smell this dirt over here. I mean, that kind of stuff needs work. So, and the, I can't get the cat. Get down, kitty. The girls that typically ride her are going to be watching this and they're going to be like, oh, I need to work on that. Or, oh, I get a little better at that. Or, oh, that's a little bit of a problem. So, and this is good for them too. All right, here I go with my groundwork. Thought that she ought to just keep pushing along there, and no, I want her to move. That's better. with Cinnamon is she's always trying to step to the inside of the circle. When you guys see me circling my horses, like I'm not lunging my horses, I'm not worried about getting energy out and sending them around and around and around. That's not important to me right now. What's important is for her to step away from me when I ask. So when my energy says move over or move forward or move back or whatever, that she's responding to that pressure, okay? And a lot of times she'll just kind of, if I'm over here, she'll just kind of do this and like lean in at me, or I want her to be up tall and turn in the direction she's going. I don't want this, I want this, okay? So, and it's the same thing with my body. I want my body to be nice and upright too. If I'm leaning, she's gonna want to lean to compensate for my leaning. So I'm gonna pick up this hair while I have her, since she's one that likes to kind of push into me as I'm moving around or whatever. If I'm just picking up this hair in the manure with this fork, she's gonna stay back, and if she bumps into this handle, that's not my fault, that's hers. She needs to pay attention to where she is in my personal space. To me, this is all very important parts of working with the horse. Now I have another story too regarding the hobbling, okay? So, those guys just standing over there. Several years ago, one of my students was leasing a horse, and she tied the horse extremely long, okay? And somebody just commented the other day on my video when I was talking about when Annabelle, I forgot my battery, guys. Big surprise, hey? It's in the other room, I'll grab it. But real quick, so somebody commented saying that the reason that Annabelle was so upset the other day when I did that, that video, they said, well, she's upset because you got her tied too long. How'd you like to be tied that short? Clearly, that's a person who doesn't know anything about horses, because if you know anything about horses, you know it's not safe to tie them long. Like for, there's situations where, sure, if I'm giving a horse grain, I'll loop the lead rope up so it's off the ground, just so it doesn't get peed on or pooped on or whatever, and they will eat their grain, but I'm around and I'm ready to catch them. So, anyway, it was just funny. I'm like, the horse is not upset because she's tied short. So many accidents can happen when a horse is tied long. So watch that kind of stuff. When you see people tie their horses real long, just know that, you know, maybe they don't have as much experience as they think, or you maybe thought they did. And they probably haven't seen what can happen from a horse being tied too long, okay? When a horse is tied properly, they should be able to comfortably move their head anywhere that they, you know, would like, but not put their head down to the ground or get the rope caught over their head. If you've ever seen that kind of stuff, it's pretty scary. I've had to fix a lot of problems with horses who have gotten their head caught underneath the rope, or here's the situation I was going to tell you is I had a student tie one of my horses really, really long. And the horse actually was able to pull the rope even longer, and she turned. So here's the horse tied to the wall, and she turns around completely. Now the rope is around her legs, and she stepped over it with one foot. So she's got the rope coming between the front legs and all of her legs up. Now, that horse has been hobble trained, obviously. She stood there like a champ. And a lot of people, if they saw their horse in that predicament, you wouldn't even want to walk up to him, because if you've seen a horse in that predicament, they will have a tendency to explode. But this horse has had a lot of work done with her feet, with rope. She's had hobbles on. She's had all kinds of things done. She knows how to give to pressure, so she didn't panic. I was able to walk up to that horse, pick up a foot. She was still able to respond to me and pick up that foot and use the thinking side of her brain and not being reactive. And I was able to get that rope untangled and completely undo her with no issues whatsoever. But that could have been a horrifying experience if, you know, it would have been a different horse or different situation. So, but anyway, that's just something to think about, because I know there's a lot of people who are going to be like, oh my gosh, hobbling is so terrible, you know, because that's just what people do, because they don't understand it. People who don't truly understand things are usually the ones that judge and badmouth and just really make a big stink about it. So a lot of the videos where people are reacting to other videos, there's a lot of keyboard cowboys out there who really don't know what they're doing. They got the talk, but they can't walk the walk. So it's just kind of how it is. All right, I'm sorry, I'm done ranting now. I'm gonna tie Miss Cinnamon up here. And now too, just to be clear, I'm not saying that I got this stuff all figured out, guys. What I'm saying is I'm not going to try to teach anything that I don't 100% feel confident in teaching. And I spend thousands of dollars a year on my own education with this particular passion that I happen to have with horses. So it's just kind of how it is. But so anyway, be careful what you watch on YouTube. There's a lot of really shady stuff out there. And I'm definitely putting myself out here doing, you know, these live videos. This horse might die, it could happen, but it's okay. You know, this is what I do every single day. What's the difference if I've got, you know, people watching on a screen or having all my students here? It doesn't matter. It's the same either way. All right, Petra and Nakona are gonna just hang out over here, and let's see, you guys will be able to see them just a little bit. I'll probably leave them there and just ride around them. Okay, bridle time. Now, just like in yesterday's video, I'm gonna go ahead and put my little bit disclaimer out there. I didn't realize I had to do that until yesterday. I firmly believe, so again, you see how much I had to firm up on her just to get her to back up out of my space? So I use bits on my horses. Oh, thank you so much. Who's that, Chelsea? Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and scroll back so I can read what you just said. Oh, that's great. I'm so glad that you enjoy my channel. Thank you, Chelsea. That really means a lot. I know this has been so hard for so many people, especially, you know, like when you're used to going out and doing stuff, and like all these kids that I got that come to my barn that can't come to my barn now, and they're used to practically living here. I feel so bad for them to be stuck at home, and here it hasn't affected me much because this is what I do every day anyway, and this is my home, so this is what I can do. But it's become a little bit more work for me, that's for sure, but it's okay. It's okay. Now, all right, so we're going to talk about bits, and we're going to talk about this too. I always put this over my shoulder. This is just going to slip right off my shoulder. I feel like this is the safest thing for me to do, is to either put it over my arm so it's on the crook of my elbow and I can quickly get out of that, or I put it over my shoulder. The only reason I would put it over my shoulder is because I am 5'3", so I'm small, and this ends up dragging on the ground. Another option is I could do it like that, but I just feel like it's less cumbersome for me to do this. But somebody told a story yesterday about how a friend of theirs actually got killed from getting tangled up in reins, and that was really sad to see that. But I've got reasons for not wanting to put the reins over the horse's head. I'll tell that on a different day because it's a little on the lengthy side. But now, I had this on Blossom yesterday. So you know what? Anytime that you ride a different horse, you always want to adjust your bridle beforehand. I'm glad I just thought of that. And where I pulled it up, I'm like, it's never going to fit her. So trying to put a bridle on a horse who has a bigger head than the one that wore it last is very, very much not kind, okay? So I always loosen it up and make sure that I've got plenty of space, because I would rather it go on too big than to go on too small, because otherwise you're squashing their ears. It's just in there, it's getting pulled on too much. I don't like to do that. So now I always grab on up here, okay? I put it around the eye. It's not in her eye. And now I'm going to bring her head down a little, because I want her to be down at my level. I don't want to have to be on my tiptoes. And now I'm going to just reach down real gently, and I let her take the bit. I don't go and cram it in her mouth. I let her take it. Nakona like grabs for the bit before you're even ready for it. So she seems to like having something to chew on. My gosh, you have a much bigger head. So now, like I said, yesterday there's a couple folks complaining about bits, saying they should be illegal, whatever. You know what? There's a time for me to use one and a time for me not to use one, okay? So I firmly believe that there's situations where I'm going to get more accomplished using a bit than if I just ride in a halter, okay? I like to start my horses in a halter, and I like to, once they've got some good finishing work to them, I like to be able to ride my horses in a halter. Like Nakona yesterday, that's how I rode her. But if I wanted to do anything real advanced, I've got to be able to have the little teeny tiniest details make sense to my horse. And with riding in a halter, there's pressure in all kinds of weird areas. So we ride with our legs, and if the horse doesn't fully understand everything that's being asked of them with strictly our body, we need more. And it's not about pain or pressure or anything like that. It's the fact that I can take this horse and I can just add a teeny tiny little bit of pressure to get her to tip her head that little tiny bit, where if I grab onto the whole halter, feel pressure as detailed as she would as if it were here. It's going to be a little bit more confusing to her, okay? So this to me makes a lot more sense to a horse, okay? But if you're going to just get on your horse and go out and trail ride and you're not interested in any kind of refinement, sure, do whatever. You know, I won't judge you for that at all. I don't judge anybody for how they, you know, what they put on their horse's head. you know, sure, there's things that I see that I'm like, that is way too much or whatever. But 99.9% of the time, I look at a rider and go, oh, they could really use some lessons. I don't look at it and say, oh, their tack is blah, blah, blah. I'm like, they just don't know enough. That's how it is. And it's not my place to judge anybody on what they use for equipment unless they pay me for my opinion. And you know what? If somebody's here and taking a lesson and they ask me, then sure, it's absolutely my place to say, you know what? I think your horse is really confused because of this, that, the other thing. But I'm not just going to be like, well, you can't take a lesson because you're using the wrong equipment. You know, if that's what they have, then I'm going to help them with what they have. Sure, I'll make suggestions on things that could make it easier on the horse and easier for them, but I'm not going to go watch somebody else's videos and then bash them because they use equipment that I don't use. That's just not right. You know, they just need education. Just like with everything, we all just need education. Now that we're talking about bits, this horse, you're going to see her clank, 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 clank on the bit, okay? And the reason she's doing that has nothing to do with the bit, all right? This is anything that happens in her mouth is all mental kind of anxiety, okay? Because she doesn't know what to do with her feet. The lead rope, the reins, I always look at them as they're connected to the horse's feet, period, okay? So when my horse is frustrated and they don't know what to do, every horse has its own way of showing their frustration. You know, some people bite their nails or they twirl their hair or whatever. This is her way of saying, I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to do, okay? She's a sensitive horse. She's not one to want to push or lean or anything when you're on her necessarily. Like, she'll be happy. If you're going circles, she just kind of leans in, but she's not like Nakona will be like, no, I'm not going forward, period. And then I have to really push her forward. This horse isn't like that. This horse is like, I want to go somewhere and do something, I just don't know what. You know, so she's a little bit more like Blossom in that way. But when she's frustrated and she isn't sure what she should be doing with her feet, that's what she does, is she'll clank her mouth. So the more she understands, oh, I'm supposed to move my hindquarters over. Oh, my belly's leaning this way and I need to move it over. When she starts to understand those things, the busy mouth goes away. So every time she's learning something new, she goes back to that habit, and her mouth has become actually very, very quiet over the last year or so. And hi, Tracy, thanks for joining. But it is a habit that takes a really long time to get rid of, you know, and the more horses develop, the better it becomes. But again, this is a lesson horse. So it's hard to get rid of some habits when they're not ridden, you know, when they're not just ridden by one person all the time. Okay. Because I'm sure somebody's going to hear that and be like, oh my gosh, that horse hates her bit, blah, blah, blah. She needs her teeth done, blah, blah, blah. Nope. That's exactly what it is, okay? All right. I'm going to go ahead and get on this horse, give her her workout. It's not going to be very long today because she hasn't worked. So, but I'll be back over to answer some questions. horse had no stop on her with my seat, and look at her push through the reins. You didn't see that on Blossom yesterday. So it's just a difference in riding a horse that a lot of other people ride. I forgot to tuck this in. So I've got a lot of finishing work to do with this horse. But again, she's a lesson horse. big old hurry. Where you going? Okay, now take a look at these two sleeping beauties over there. Do they look like they're bothered? They aren't minding that at all. Let's see, it's been what, an hour and 20 minutes roughly. I can't be out here too long. So I want you guys to, if you've watched the last ride, my ride on Blossom and Nakona, I want you to understand that my legs are going to be so sore, okay? And did you notice the busy mouth? That was pretty much every time I was asking her, no, move over, no, do this, no, don't run through my hands. Every time I was asking something of her, that's when she's like, chomp, chomp, because she's unsure. And so the more a horse understands, the more confident they become, okay? So she's used to being ridden in lessons. A lot of times she's just ridden in a halter or, you know, the type of side pulls that I've got. She's not being asked to do anything very detailed. And I can tell you, it's funny because when I was riding her to the left, that used to be her good side. And now the left was really leaning in bad. So I had to do a lot with my left leg to keep her from leaning in on me so much. Where traveling to the right, she was actually pretty decent. So that's gonna be my goal for her now, is to kind of try to even that up. But she's like riding worm, okay? She's a little bit more work than what she actually looks. So as she's going along, like the hips are floating out here and there. She's kind of all over the place. And so she's kind of hard to ride in that aspect. And actually she's one that I would benefit in my ride, and so would she, because it'd be a lot more clear if I had a little equitation spur on, because I could pinpoint, just like using a bit, I could pinpoint and be like, yes, this is what I want, move over now, okay? So, and I wouldn't want to ride her in that forever by any means, but like Blossom leaned on me so bad when I started riding her, and it was like torture for both me and her. And I felt like I was just nagging and nagging and nagging. And I was at a clinic and I didn't have any spurs on me, and I didn't take any with me. And so I borrowed a pair of spurs from somebody, and I'm like, I just can't, like, my legs are gonna fall off. I cannot get this horse to move off my leg. I put a spur on, and it wasn't 3 laps around the arena of her just kind of bumping into that spur. And she's just like, oh, I get it, I'm supposed to move over. So horses don't naturally just know that they need to move off of your leg. Horses are kind of, you know, by nature, they want to push into each other. So instead of moving away from the pressure. But so when I ride her next, maybe I'll put a little spur on so I can make sure that I can keep her straight, because she's just all over the place. And even when I take a hold of the rein, she's not looking she's not following a feel by any means. And that's what I want. I like for my horse's feet to basically be connected to my reins. And it's just, you know, what I mean by that is when I pick up on my rein, my left rein, I'm actually asking that, so if it's my left rein, that left front foot to go somewhere, okay? That's how I get turnarounds and all that. But with her, I go to pick up on my left rein and she's just like leans into me. So there's just a lot of finishing work that needs to be done here. So her busyness in her mouth, the more I ride her and the more I work on that kind of stuff, that's going to go away drastically. So that's just her saying, I'm a little confused, I don't really get it, or I'm frustrated because there's pressure and I don't know how to get rid of it, kind of deal. And the more she figures out how to get rid of that pressure, the better she'll be. Now I want to explain this too, because Buck Brannaman has a great saying. He's like, yeah, some people say, well, I don't need all that fancy arena riding stuff. I just want to trail ride. He says, well, that's like saying I'd rather just go die out in the trees. And that means so much, because a lot of people, that's the way they think. But for me, when I'm riding this horse, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's no straightness here whatsoever. Like everything is just like sideways and crooked and all over and leaning, and it's just not fun. It's like being on a bike with bent rims and you're all over the place. It's just not fun at all. So it's important for me to have all this stuff really dialed in the arena, and sure, and then go out, try, do whatever, but that kind of stuff's really important to me, that you need to have those basics down. And here's another thing too is this horse, she's actually, if you look at her feet, for a while, let's see, it was the right lead that was really bad because she was leaning this way. So her feet, now I haven't paid attention to this in a while, but her feet actually were like worn like this. So instead of her feet being up like this, they were like this, okay? She would wear off this side because she was always leaning and she's kind of pulling herself along. And she'd wear off the front feet more than the hind. Now, anybody that was watching me trim Nakona the other day, Nakona wears down her hind feet more than the front. But Nakona works more from the hind end than the front end. And that's what we want. So this horse, I mean, we're risking like injury and stuff just because of how she's moving around. I want her to move straight and square and use her body in a manner where she's not going to injure herself, because that can happen. So it's just really important to me. So I'll spend some time working with her and going through those things. And I firmly believe that a lot of the leaning that she's doing is from being ridden in just a halter, because she's not able to be kept straight as much. Now, somebody just asked about a horse leaning coming through the corners. You just got, it's everything I've just been talking about. You've got to be able to use your legs and have your horse move off your leg. So this horse doesn't move off of leg good. You put your leg on and she leans into it, and then she starts chewing on her bit because she's like, I want to get rid of that pressure, but I don't know how. And if she just moves over, then the pressure goes away, and then she's like, oh, and her mouth is suddenly quiet. So, but people are just like, oh, she doesn't like the bit, she doesn't like this. They don't try to find, people try to treat the symptom and not the disease. The disease is this horse is bracy and leans. The symptom is she chews a lot, okay? So that's what I'm looking at. With Nona, when I'm putting my leg on Nakona and I'm asking her to move over and she's not responding, you'll see her swishing her tail at me because she's like, I don't like that. I want that pressure to go away. And I'm like, I want you to move off my leg. And when she moves off my leg, I release it. And then the tail stops swishing. So it's the same exact thing. But when there's no braciness in them, you don't see any of those issues. Okay? Hi, kitty. Hi. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to turn Kona and Petra loose for a little bit. So I'm going to turn these two loose and just kind of let them move around a little bit. And I'm going to get back on Cinnamon and I'm going to carry a flag and I'm going to kind of move them around. It's just one way that I like to exercise extra horses that I'm not riding. And it's really good for this horse to have a job. So it'll give her something to do. It'll be kind of a little bit of a cool down for her, but a little bit more of a fun session. So I'm going to go ahead and turn these guys loose and hop back on and move them around. Does anybody have any questions before I get back on about anything that you may have just seen? Anything? No? Okay. Okay, Nakona and Petra are loose. That's a terrible place for Petra to be rolling, right next to the door there. Not smart. All right, here we go again. Sorry, Cinnamon. Oh, and see the walking off too? I gotta work on that. But I'm a little cumbersome getting up on her because she's bigger. I'm short. Okay, here we go. a minute or two. And that's really fun to do though with, I like to use Annabelle for that. She really likes that job of driving the other horses, and it's really fun with like Ona, because she really likes to move. And so these two are pretty lazy as far as, you know, they're just like, whatever, we don't want to move. But some of the ones that like to move around a little more, it's a lot more fun. Now what on earth did I do with, oh, the mulchers over there. So, okay, what questions can I answer? What I was just doing, I just call that flagging. I'm just flagging them around. And a lot of times, like with lessons and stuff, the kids will love when I bring the minis in and I have them flagging the minis around and stuff. They have a blast on their horses from that. That was good for Cinnamon because she was a little nervous about the flag. She's not too sure about that. And she's also not used to driving those horses. Those horses are her boss. So she's not used to driving those horses around. So it's good for her too because it gives her some confidence with that kind of stuff. Cinnamon is she's about 11 or 12 roughly. I honestly, I don't remember. Maybe she's 10. I don't know. She's somewhere between 10 and 12. Yeah, so if I had been on like Nika or Annabelle, where they're really comfortable with the flag. So Cinnamon's not really comfortable with the flag with that kind of stuff. So, but the horses that I have that are really comfortable with the flag, and I can get up there and I can really hustle that horse out of there, then I would have done that. But that would have been a little bit too much, you know, Cinnamon would have gotten a little nervous about that. And I just want her to be like, oh, okay, we're just moving them along. This is no big deal. So she'll get better at that kind of stuff. But I don't know if I've ever flagged a horse off of her. I know I have a little bit for lessons. She's done it a little bit, but not much. She will remain a lesson horse. She's really easygoing. And, you know, there's a lot of really good things about her. So she's a great lesson horse. If she were young, so if she were 3 or 4 and just being started, I'd probably consider her for myself. But she's already got so much stuff that, like, I like them where they don't have anything done to them and they're really sensitive and I don't have to fix all that stuff. So who's the bottom horse of the herd? Well, hey, get out of there. Rosie's pretty low. Who else? You know, Manzer, of course, he's down there because he's new. But the ponies are a little lower on the pecking order. Cinnamon's pretty low on the pecking order. She does pick on Rosie though, so which isn't very nice. But she will usually pick on her, especially when she was in here the other day and hadn't been out in the pasture with the herd for a little while. So, but for the most part, they kind of all, you know, I don't really have any that are really getting picked on. Sally's thing, they don't really pick on anybody, but yeah, Sally's down at the bottom. She doesn't bother anybody. Nobody bothers her. She kind of tries to push ponies around sometimes, but it's never anything big by any means. So, all right, well, I'm going to get her halter and we're going to take her into the other, I'm going to take her in the other room. So if nobody has any other questions right now, I'm going to go ahead and sign out so I can just get these guys undone and let them kind of do their thing while I go do what I got to do. So I will be back here tomorrow. Who's the top of the Borders herd? Tuffy. Tuffy is a horse that I used to own that I sold to one of my students. So Tuffy is definitely in charge. So, and he was in charge in my herd. So he was the top dog. And then when he left, Nakona took over. So it's kind of how it works. Somebody's got to be in charge. But all right, I don't know what I'm going to do tomorrow yet, but stay tuned and I will see you tomorrow. If you have any questions, you can leave me questions in the comments below this video after it's processed. And just to let you guys know, the last few times, usually my videos process pretty quickly, but for some reason they're taking several hours to process now. So this video will be available. Thank you, Lucy. That's really nice of you. Awesome. We made $25 today. That's really great. So, so just be patient. It will be available later tonight or tomorrow morning. If you missed the beginning part of it, you can go back and watch that. But I try to respond to any questions, so go ahead and leave those in the comments below. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you later. Bye.